Adaora was 16, the only girl in a family of 6 children in Oji River, Enugu State. But in her home, being the only daughter was not a blessing. It was a curse. Her 5 brothers, Emeka, Nonso, Chuka, Somto, and Ibuka, had uniforms for school, books filled with knowledge, and dreams that stretched beyond the village dust. Adaora had none of that. Instead, she woke before dawn, her hands raw from scrubbing pots, her back bent from fetching water, and her heart heavy from the silence of a family that never truly saw her. While her brothers ate hot yam and eggs before school, she was given the cold scraps, sometimes half-spoiled, sometimes licked by flies. While they slept on mattresses, Adaora curled herself onto a torn mat in the corner, shivering against the cold cement floor. No one wished her happy birthday. No one asked how she felt. To them, she was invisible, useful only for chores, not worthy of dreams. Once, when Adaora had timidly asked her mother, Mama Neka, if she could go to school, she was slapped so hard her ears rang for hours. "Who will cook for your brothers if you're in school? Do you want them to starve?" Mama snapped. Her father, Papa Uche, was no gentler. To him, Adaora was simply a burden, a mouth to feed until she could be married off. He often said, "Girls are like clay pots. They don't last long in a house. Better to send them off early." Yet despite all this, Adaora's heart clung stubbornly to hope. She dreamed that one day her mother might hug her, that her father might tell her he was proud, that her brothers might stop treating her like a ghost. She didn't want riches or even luxury. All she wanted was to matter. But deep inside, Adaora sensed something. Love did not live in her house, only duty. And one day soon, she would be asked to pay the highest price for being born a girl. The day everything changed began like any other. Adaora woke before the sun, swept the compound, and cooked pap for her brothers while her parents sat in silence. But by evening, panic swept through the house. Her eldest brother, Emeka, staggered home from school, clutching his head and groaning in pain. He vomited twice before collapsing onto the bamboo mat. Mama Naneka wailed, and Papa Uche lifted him in his arms like he was a king. For the first time in Adaora's life, she saw fear in her father's eyes. At the hospital in Enugu, the doctor's words crushed the family. "Your son has a tumor in his brain. He will need urgent surgery. The cost is 12 million naira." 12 million. The number echoed like thunder. It was more money than the family had ever imagined, more than they could ever dream of. The days that followed were filled with desperation. Papa Uche sold the family's old Peugeot, the television, even Mama's coral beads from her wedding chest. They begged distant relatives for help, but all shook their head. Church members prayed, but no money came. Emeka grew weaker by the day. His eyes, once sharp with confidence, turned pale and empty. Food slipped from his lips, and his laughter, once loudest in the house, disappeared. Adaora watched silently from the corner as her parents' faces grew harder, their whispers sharper. She knew what would come next, because in their house, whenever trouble arose, the blame always circled back to her. That night, Mama Neka entered Adaora's small corner. Her shadow stretched across the wall, long and heavy like a warning. "Wake up," she said, her voice flat and cold. Adaora sat up, rubbing her tired eyes. "Mama, what is it?" "There is one way left to save your brother." Her mother's tone was steady, but her eyes gleamed like steel. "There is a rich man in Abuja. He is offering a fortune to any family willing to give their daughter in marriage." Adaora's heart skipped. "Marriage? To who?" Mama's voice dropped to a whisper that cut like a knife. To his dog. The world around Adaora tilted. She stared at her mother, waiting for laughter, for some sign this was a cruel joke, but Mama's face was stone. Serious. Deadly serious. You can't mean it, Mama. I'm a human being, Adaora whispered, her voice breaking. This is not about feelings, Adaora. Mama snapped, her eyes hard. This is about survival. Do you want your brother to die while you sit here breathing and doing nothing? Tears spilled down Adaora's cheeks, but Mama only turned away. In that moment, Adaora realized she was not a daughter in her parents' eyes. She was a sacrifice. The morning came too soon. Adaora barely slept, her face still wet with tears from her mother's words. She prayed silently that it had all been a nightmare. But when Papa Uche's deep voice summoned her to the sitting room, she knew the nightmare was only beginning. The family sat in a circle. Mama Naneka on the wooden chair like a queen, her 5 brothers beside her, quiet but watchful. Adaora stood trembling in the center. Papa Uche's voice was sharp, final. You are going to be married? Adaora's lips trembled. To who? He didn't blink. To the rich man's dog. Her world collapsed. No, Papa, please, this cannot be real. She dropped to her knees, sobbing, clutching his feet. But his face was stone. This is not a request, Adaora. We have already accepted. He is paying $12 million. Do you know what that means? You should be grateful anyone even wants you. The words cut deeper than any slap. Grateful, useful, sold. That was all she was. She turned to her mother, desperation in her voice. Mama, please. I am your daughter. How can you? Mama Naneka looked away coldly. You should be thankful. At last you will do something useful for this family. Something broke inside Adaora. She had always known she was unwanted, but now the truth was clear. She was not a child to them. She was a price tag. When she tried to run, Papa's hand came down hard across her face. The slap burned like fire, stars bursting in her eyes. She fell to the floor, her lip bleeding. You will go, he growled. That is final. They dragged her into her room and locked the door. From the cold floor, Adaora cried until her throat ached. She had once hoped for love from this family. Now she knew the truth. Love did not live here, only duty, and she was the sacrifice. At dawn, Mama entered with a small nylon bag, torn skirts, old wrappers, a faded church gown. She shoved it into Adaora's hands. Wash your face, the driver will soon arrive. When the black car pulled into the compound at 9 a.m., Papa rushed out, smiling like a fool. A man in a dark suit stepped out, tall and rich, his shoes shining like glass. He examined Adaora like she was livestock. She looks healthy, he said simply. Papa nodded eagerly, already counting the envelope of cash. She's all yours now. Adaora's feet felt heavy as stones as the man opened the car door. She looked back one last time, hoping anyone would stop this, but no one did. Her brothers stared blankly. Mama looked away. Papa smiled wide with greed. No tears, no hugs, no goodbyes. And as the car rolled away from Oji River, Adaora whispered inside her heart, I am no longer their daughter. I am their sacrifice. The journey from Oji River to Abuja felt endless. Adaora sat in the back seat of the sleek, black car, clutching her nylon bag like it was the only piece of herself she had left. The driver did not speak, and neither did she. Through the tinted windows, she watched villages fade into towns and towns stretch into the towering city. When the car finally slowed, Adaora's breath caught. Before her rose a massive golden gate, taller than any tree she had ever seen. It opened slowly, like magic, and the car rolled into a compound unlike anything she had known. The mansion loomed white marble walls, glittering windows, fountains dancing in the courtyard. The air was crisp, scented with roses and polished wood. Adaora's bare feet sank into a red velvet carpet as the driver led her through endless hallways lit by chandeliers. She had never seen so much beauty, yet her heart pounded with dread because beauty could not hide the silence. The servants they passed did not smile, did not greet her. They moved like shadows, heads bowed, eyes empty. At last they stopped before a pair of tall golden doors. The driver pushed them open, and there he was, sitting on a raised cushion like a king on a throne, the beast. His fur was snow white, glowing under the chandelier light. Around his neck glimmered a diamond-studded collar, his eyes piercing, haunting blue eyes locked on hers. They were too sharp, too human, too old for an animal. Adaora froze. Her heart hammered. Her knees threatened to give way. The man in the suit bowed. "Master, your bride has arrived." Adaora's lips trembled. "Bride?" She wanted to scream, to run, to wake up and find herself back on her torn mat in Oji River. But the mansion was real, and so was this creature. The dog stood, towering, powerful, silent. He circled her slowly, his paws soundless on the velvet rug, sniffing the air around her. Adaora dared not move. She felt like prey. Then, to her shock, he nodded once. The man smiled faintly. "He accepts you." "Accepts me?" Adaora thought bitterly. "Like I'm cattle in the market?" Two maids in black uniforms stepped forward and took her arms. They led her away, down another corridor, into a golden chamber with a bed larger than her family's entire room back home. The walls glowed with velvet curtains, mirrors framed in gold, and a chandelier that sparkled like stars. The door clicked shut behind her. Locked. Adaora rushed to the handle. Pulling desperately, it would not budge. She ran to the window. Bars, heavy, cold, unbreakable. And somewhere in that mansion, her so-called husband was waiting. Adaora sat on the edge of the silk-sheeted bed, trembling, tears sliding down her cheeks. She had been sold into beauty, but it was a beauty that felt like a cage. That night, Adaora did not sleep. She sat curled on the edge of the golden bed, knees pulled tight to her chest, staring at the locked door. Every shadow in the room seemed alive. Every flicker of candlelight whispered of danger. At dawn, the door creaked open. A young woman stepped inside, dressed in a neat black and white uniform. She looked about 20, with smooth, dark skin, tired eyes, and an expression that carried the weight of secrets. "Good morning," she said softly, placing a silver tray of food on the table. Warm bread, eggs, and fruit. "My name is Halima. I am here to explain the rules." "Rules?" Adaora whispered, her voice weak. Halima folded her hands in front of her and recited them calmly, as if she had said them 100 times. 1. Never leave your room without permission. 2. Never try to run away. 3. Never disobey the master. Adaora's throat tightened. "The master, you mean the dog?" Halima's lips pressed together. For a long moment she was silent. Then she nodded slowly. "He is not just a dog." Adaora's heart pounded. "Then, what is he?" Halima's eyes softened with sorrow. "He was once a man, a prince, but long ago he was cursed. If the curse is not broken soon, he will remain this way forever." Adaora's mind spun. A curse forever? She tried to laugh, but the sound came out cracked, trembling. "And how is it broken?" Halima's gaze held hers with a strange intensity. Only the heart of a girl who truly loves him, not out of pity, not out of fear, but real love can break the spell. Adaora froze, her chest heavy. Love? With a beast? With those haunting blue eyes that looked too human, too ancient? Halima gave a faint, almost motherly smile. He chose you, Adaora. Your spirit, your blood. Something about you gives him hope. Hope. The word sounded strange in this mansion where walls were bars and silence was chains. Adaora turned to the untouched tray of food. She wasn't hungry, not for bread, not for answers. What life had she been dragged into? A beast for a husband, a curse that demanded her heart, and a mansion where beauty itself felt like a trap. As Halima turned to leave, she paused at the door. Her voice was low, but heavy with warning. This house may feel like a prison, Adaora, but what waits beyond the gates is far more dangerous. The lock clicked shut again. Adaora sat frozen, staring at the golden mirror across the room. Her reflection trembled back at her, a stranger in silk gowns. A prisoner, a bride, a key to a curse she never asked to hold. 2 days passed in silence before Halima returned, with a folded blue dress in her hands. The fabric shimmered like water, stitched with tiny pearls. She placed it gently on the bed. The master wishes to walk with you in the east garden, she said softly. He asked that you wear this. Adaora hesitated. Her heart raced at the thought of stepping outside with the beast. But Halima's eyes, tired yet strangely kind, urged her forward. With trembling fingers, Adaora slipped into the dress. For the first time in her life, she wore something fine, yet instead of joy, it felt like a costume for someone else's life. The hallways stretched long and silent as Halima led her out. Servants moved like shadows, never meeting her gaze. Then sunlight touched her face, warm and golden, and Adaora stepped into the garden. It was alive with beauty roses in crimson, ivory, and gold. The air was thick with perfume, and the breeze carried a quiet melody of rustling leaves. And in the middle of it all sat the beast, Prince Zubair, white fur glowing in the light, blue eyes fixed on the horizon as though remembering another world. When he turned to her, Adaora's breath caught. His voice came not through her ears, but deep inside her mind, low and sorrowful. You are afraid of me? She stumbled back, clutching her chest. You can speak? Only to the one chosen to break the curse. His voice echoed within her. Adaora's lips trembled. You're not just a dog, are you? He lowered his head slightly, almost in shame. I was once a man, a prince. My name is Zubair. I was proud, cold, blind to everything but power. And for that, I was cursed. His gaze lingered on a rose bush, its petals deep red. These were my mother's favorites, he whispered. She planted them before she died. My pride killed her. Adaora's chest tightened. She wanted to look away, to harden herself against him, but the sorrow in his voice was too raw, too human. So she stood beside him in silence. Two broken souls, one cursed by magic, the other by cruelty, sharing the same air, the same stillness. And though she didn't know it yet, something deep within both of them had begun to shift. Days turned into a quiet rhythm. Each morning, Adaora walked with Prince Zubair in the East Garden. At first, she kept her distance, her body tense, her eyes lowered. But slowly the fear loosened its grip. He never barked, never growled. He only watched her with those haunting blue eyes that carried centuries of silence. One morning, as the breeze rustled the roses, Zubair stopped beneath the shade of an old sycamore tree. His voice echoed inside her mind, softer than before. "There is something I want to show you." He led her into the mansion, through the grand library lined with books that whispered as she passed. Behind a hidden shelf, a narrow staircase spiraled downward, lit by lanterns glowing with golden light. At the bottom lay a glass chamber. In its center stood a single, enormous rose golden, alive, its petals shimmering as though breathing. Adaora gasped, her eyes wide with wonder. "What? What is this?" she whispered. Zubair's gaze softened, sorrow filling his voice. "This is the heart of the curse." Her hand trembled as she pressed it against the glass. The rose pulsed faintly, like a beating heart. "If this rose dies before I am truly loved," Zubair continued, "not pitied, not feared, but loved, I will remain a beast forever." Adaora's breath caught. The weight of his words sank deep into her chest. This rose was not just a flower. It was his soul, his hope, his prison. She turned to him, her voice trembling. "And if no one ever loves you?" His shoulders lowered. "Then I remain as I am. A warning, a lesson carved into fur and silence." Adaora stared at the shimmering petals. All her life she had been unwanted, unloved, discarded like a rag, and now here was a man, trapped in the body of a beast, whose fate depended on something she had never known herself: true love. For the first time, she realized she and Zubair were not so different. Both prisoners, both broken by the cruelty of others, both desperate for something more. That night, Adaora sat by her window, staring at the moonlight spilling across the velvet curtains. She could not stop thinking about the rose breathing, shimmering, waiting, a reminder that time was running out. And in the silence of her golden prison, a question burned in her heart. Could someone who had never been loved learn how to give love strong enough to break a curse? The days in the mansion blurred into one another, silence in the hallways, whispers in the library, roses blooming in endless shades in the east garden. Yet inside Adaora, something unfamiliar stirred. She found herself speaking more when Zubair was near, not because she had to, but because he listened, truly listened. When she told him how Mama Naneka once said she was useless, he didn't brush it aside. His low, steady voice echoed in her mind. "You did not deserve that." No one had ever said those words to her before. And though he was wrapped in fur, she felt more human around him than she ever had in her own home. One evening, Adaora wandered into the garden alone. The sky stretched wide, stars scattered like spilled salt, the moon glowing silver. Zubair was waiting beneath the sycamore tree, his blue eyes fixed on the heavens. Adaora stepped closer, her voice low, uncertain. "Dance with me." Zubair turned his head, startled. "Dance?" His tone carried both confusion and sorrow. "Adaora, I do not look like someone you dance with." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "I didn't ask what you look like. I asked you to dance." Slowly, hesitantly, he placed his heavy paw in her hand. His touch was rough, strange, but she did not pull away. Together, they moved into the clearing, their steps clumsy at first, then gentler, steadier. There was no music, only the rustling of leaves, the rhythm of the wind, and the thunder of Adaora's heartbeat. Then something happened. The air shimmered. Tiny lights rose from the ground like stars set free. The roses around them opened wider, glowing in the night. A melody floated through the breeze, not from instruments, but from the mansion itself, as though the very walls had been waiting for this moment. Zubair's eyes locked on hers. For the first time, the sorrow in them softened. "You are not like anyone I have ever met," he whispered inside her heart. Adaora held his gaze. "I am just a girl, one who is forgotten, just like you." The magic swelled around them as they moved together in the moonlight, no longer prisoner and beast, but two broken souls finding rhythm in each other's silence. When the last note faded, Zubair bowed not as a beast, but as a prince. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for seeing me." And for the first time in her life, Adaora felt it. She was seen, not as a servant, not as a burden, but as someone who mattered. The morning after the dance, Adaora woke in the softest bed she had ever known. Sunlight streamed through velvet curtains, bathing the room in gold. For a few seconds, she forgot everything. The curse, the mansion, the family who had sold her. For a few seconds, she felt like a girl in a dream. Then her eyes caught the golden mirror across the room. Its surface rippled like water disturbed by a stone. Adaora gasped and stepped back as an image slowly formed. A woman appeared tall, with long silver hair that shimmered like moonlight and eyes glowing with power and sorrow. Her face was beautiful, but burdened, as though she carried centuries of secrets. "Adaora," the woman's voice flowed like music, soft yet heavy. "You are changing everything." Adaora's lips trembled. Who are you?" "I am the guardian of this place, the one who watches through the mirror. This mansion was built on love and sacrifice, but it has slept for years, until you arrived." Adaora shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "No, you must be mistaken. I am nobody, a girl my parents sold like meat in the market." The guardian's expression softened. "No, child. You are more than that. You have the rarest gift, a heart that sees beyond the surface, a heart that can love, even after pain." The words pierced Adaora's chest. She wanted to argue, to deny it, but deep inside she felt something stir, the same feeling she had when Zubair's eyes softened during the dance, when his voice trembled with sorrow in the garden. Her voice shook. You cursed him, didn't you?" The guardian's glowing eyes darkened with grief. "It was not hatred that led to the curse, Adaora. It was justice. Prince Zubair was proud, cruel, blind to kindness. He broke the heart of one who loved him, and I gave him the form of a beast to mirror the beast inside his soul." Adaora's hands balled into fists. "And now you want me to fix it? Why me?" "Because, Adaora," the guardian whispered, "only someone who has known deep suffering can see beyond scars. Only someone who has been unloved can teach another what true love means. You were not brought here by chance. Fate chose you." The mirror rippled again, the guardian's image fading into silver light. Adaora stared at her own reflection, a girl in a silk gown, eyes still swollen from years of tears, but carrying a strength she had never known. She pressed her hand against the mirror. For the first time she believed the truth. She was no longer just a forgotten daughter. She was the key. That night, Adaora could not rest. The guardian's words echoed in her mind. Only someone who has been unloved can teach another what true love means. She sat by the barred window, staring at the silver moon, as though it might hold the answers she desperately sought. When dawn broke, Halima came to her room, her face pale with unease. "Adaora, you must come." Confused, Adaora followed her down the winding corridors, through the library, and into the hidden staircase beneath. At the bottom, the glass chamber glowed faintly, but something was terribly wrong. The golden rose, the heart of the curse, was wilting. Its once bright petals sagged, edges curling into shadow. A faint shimmer still clung to it, but its glow was fading, as though its life was slipping away. Zubair stood before it, his massive form shrouded in sorrow. He did not look at Adaora. His blue eyes were fixed on the dying flower. "It weakens," he said, his voice echoing in her mind, low and hollow. "Time is running out." Adaora's chest tightened. But why now? He closed his eyes. "Because every girl brought here before you failed. Some ran, some screamed, some cursed me. Each petal fell with their rejection. You are my last hope, Adaora. When this rose dies, so will the chance to ever be free." Adaora pressed her hands against the glass, tears brimming. The rose seemed to pulse faintly at her touch, as if responding to her presence. "You should not place all of this on me," she whispered. "I don't even know how to love. No one has ever loved me." At last, Zubair turned, his eyes heavy with centuries of regret. "That is why fate chose you, because love born from pain is stronger than anything else." For a long moment, they stood in silence, two broken souls staring at the fragile rose that bound them both. Adaora's tears fell freely, not just for Zubair, not just for herself, but for every petal that had died because someone could not see past fur, past curses, past appearances. That night, she whispered to herself in the stillness of her chamber, "If no one ever showed me love, then I will be the one to learn it. For him, for me, for both of us." And in the chamber below, the golden rose trembled as though it had heard her vow. The days that followed were heavy with silence. Adaora felt the weight of the fading rose pressing on her heart. Each time she passed the golden chamber, she feared the shimmer would be gone, that Zubair's fate would be sealed forever. One evening, she found him sitting alone in the east garden. The moonlight cast silver over his white fur, but his head was bowed, his eyes shadowed with despair. He didn't notice her at first. His voice echoed in her heart, raw and heavy. "Perhaps it is time I accept my fate. No one can love a beast." Adaora's steps slowed. She saw him not as a monster, not as a prince, but as someone broken. Someone who had once been cruel, yes, but who now carried sorrow deeper than words. She remembered the guardian's words. Only someone who has been unloved can teach another what true love means. Her chest ached. "You're wrong," she said softly. Zubair lifted his head, startled. Adaora knelt before him, her tears glistening in the moonlight. "All my life, I was treated as nothing, fed last, beaten, sold like I was meat. No one told me I was enough. No one showed me love. But somehow, here with you, I have learned that being seen, being heard matters. You listen. You care. That is more than my family ever gave me." His blue eyes shimmered, uncertain. "Adaora, I am cursed. If you tie your heart to mine, you may share in my sorrow forever." She placed her hand gently on his paw, her touch steady. "Then let me share it, because for the first time I am not invisible. And if my heart can bring you peace, then let it be so." The wind shifted. The roses swayed, glowing faintly in the night. The ground trembled beneath them as though the earth itself had heard her vow. In the chamber below, the golden rose pulsed with sudden brilliance, its petals lifting, shimmering like fire. Zubair's breath shuddered, his form shaking under the moonlight. Magic surged around them, wrapping them both in a light so pure it felt alive. Adaora's eyes widened as she whispered, "I see you, Zubeir, not the beast, the man." The air cracked with power. The curse had been challenged. And in that moment, both Adaora and Zubeir knew the test of love had begun. The night air was heavy with magic. Adaora and Zubeir stood in the east garden, the golden rose chamber glowing faintly beneath them. Its petals trembled as if waiting for a verdict. Zubeir's form shook, his breaths ragged. "The curse is tightening." His voice echoed in her heart. "If the rose dies tonight, I remain a beast forever." Adaora's chest burned. She remembered every slap, every cold word, every night she cried into her mat back in Oji River. She remembered how her family had sold her without tears. Yet here in this mansion of shadows and roses, she had found something she never thought she would. Someone who saw her. She stepped forward, her hand trembling as she touched his fur. "Zubeir, all my life, I believed I was worthless. They told me I was nothing. But you, even in your sorrow, even in your curse, you listened. You cared, and that is more love than I have ever known." His blue eyes widened, glowing with something fierce and fragile. "Adaora, if you give me your heart, it may bind you to a beast forever." Adaora shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, I give it not to a beast, but to the man I see behind the fur, to the prince who longs for redemption, to the soul who taught me that I matter." The earth trembled. The roses burst open in brilliant bloom, their colors blazing like fire. Above them, the sky lit with silver light, and the golden rose in the chamber below flared, brighter than the moon. Zubeir roared not in anger but in release. His body convulsed, light tearing through his fur. The beastly form cracked, breaking apart like glass shattering. And when the light cleared, Adaora gasped. Before her stood not a dog but a man, tall, strong, with deep brown skin and the same haunting blue eyes, now filled with gratitude instead of sorrow. He fell to his knees before her. "Adaora," he whispered, his voice no longer echoing in her mind, but alive on his lips, rich and human. "You have freed me." Adaora knelt, her tears falling freely. For the first time, she was no longer the forgotten daughter, no longer the sacrifice. She was the one who broke the curse, not with wealth, not with beauty, but with the power of a heart that had learned to love through pain. And as dawn rose over Maitama, painting the sky in gold, the mansion that once felt like a prison shimmered with new life. Adaora had found her worth, and in doing so, she had saved them both.